And we're live.
Hey guys, it's that time again. Billy Merritt presents another expert. Now on Mondays we had the money show. We still had the money banner behind us because sales is directly related to money. If you're selling, you're concerned about your money. So let's consider this the Monday morning money show 2.0, and I always bring you an expert. Today is no different. I have the great and powerful Jeff Stearns. Now, everybody has a story. Everybody has some type of expertise. Jeff, what is your claim to fame? Tell us about who you are, what you're doing, your podcast, and at some point, I got to ask you about that beautiful Pebble Beach painting behind you. Let's start with the story of Jeff Stearns.
Oh, my goodness. So I think I'm a car guy. My dad was a dealer in Detroit. My grandfather was a designer for Ford. My stepfather was an assembly line equipment designer. Started going to work with dad 8, 9, 10 years old. Learned when I answered the phone not to tell customers that he's in the bathroom. He gave me that lesson. It was really about love of cars and people for me. My dad was an antique. He was very popular. So he had all the antique cars and loan cars, the city of Detroit for 4th of July parade. And we could ride in the rumble seat of the Model A and the parade and all that. So it felt like a little bit of a celebrity deal. He was an independent. I disappointed my dad when I went into retail. He wanted us to be real citizens like CPAs and veterinarians or something, not car people. So he sold the place, moved to Florida, and I did it anyway. But I'm one of the few car people that did it on purpose. It wasn't like a stopover thing. You know,
I
wanted to be in the business.
Yep. You know, I hear so many people say, well, I didn't set out to be in the car business. I loved it from the beginning. I saw salespeople on the showroom floor. I saw sales managers behind the desk penciling deals, and I just loved it from the beginning.
Same. And I loved people. I probably read, I don't want to exaggerate, 150 sales books, psychology, how to dress, whatever, over my first couple of years selling. Like, no kidding. And it might have been 200, but I'd like to back it up.
Sure.
And was also consuming like 15 car magazines that a couple of them were weekly and consuming them all. So I was into the people and the craft of selling, like down to the molecular, and also the cars. So I was in retail, Billy, about 27. I hate to say it because, I'm selling chat now. So every internet director I talk to has been a lot less time than I was in retail.
Sure.
So that's no fun, right? To admit age. But I loved every second of it. I only went into the vendor space due to an unforeseen family issue, a divorce, didn't know was coming, knew I needed to become available for my sons, needed a little bit more time, and had been a huge fan of Car Chat 24, where I've worked for 9 years now, and had been not looking at job offers, not paying attention for about a year. And I finally accepted one so I could be making dinner every night and be around the weekend. But I never wanted to leave retail and loved every minute of it. It was nothing like, oh, I'm finally out. Not at all.
Right. So did you do the 7 days a week thing? What cities did you sell in retail?
I was really lucky. I worked in, I did work 7 days a week for a long time. Well, 21 days in a row. That's a better way to put it, for a lot of the time in my early 20s. But, it wasn't work, right? I mean, it was like going fishing or flying or playing football every day. I mean, it wasn't like going to work. Right. So who wouldn't want to play all the time and making my 6 figures, I think, when I was 22 and came close at 21. So I was addicted, right? And that was real money in the mid 80s.
Sure.
So I loved every minute of it, but I was really lucky in that I'm in Pinellas County, Florida, so the Clearwater area. And my first job was at a Ford store, and I ended up in F&I about a year in, and I was way too young. And I did get fired, and my house was in the middle of being built, the house that I'm still in, when I got fired, and ended up very lucky applying for a job at a store that only hired once a year. They'd run their ad. Every salesman and every manager in town would leave their store for the day and go apply and see each other at the application hotel conference room, and then pretend they didn't see each other at work the next day, applying for a job. But it was a store called Carlisle Lincoln Mercury in Clearwater, Florida. It was about a 650 new and used car a month Lincoln Mercury store, 200 service ROs a day, top CSI for all Ford and Lincoln stores for like 14 years in a row.
So did you ever work at a smaller store?
My first job out of high school after second period, when everyone else was going to 31 flavors, when I had enough credits to go work, was at George D. Baker's Countryside Autorama, a mulch lot.
Really?
And that's where I learned I sold 4 cars this week. How do I know? They all said they're coming back.
Right.
And no one came back.
Exactly. So, it's a big difference between these little rural stores and then your I don't know if you can tell me if you consider Tampa, Clearwater Metro, but in the bigger cities, the bigger volume stores, at least where they're selling 600 cars, per month, there's a huge difference in operations. There's a huge difference in process. Tell us about the difference between these rural markets and the big city markets, and what do you like and dislike about each of them?
Well, I never worked in a rural market, but now as a vendor to the space, I'm on the phone all day with everybody from rural Texas, rural Canada. You name it. So I really can get a good barometer now. So I can tell you what I think it is, although I never sold rural. Tampa Bay is a pretty darn big market now. Yes. That's for sure.
Lots of vendors down there also. Sorry to jump in there, but man, there's some vendors in Tampa. I cut my teeth in the direct mail business in the early 2000s with one of the hundreds of companies from the Tampa area. So, they're just car guys everywhere down there.
And you were involved with Grant for a while, weren't you?
Yep. I had a contract to sell Cardone on demand, the training technologies. I can still sell it today, but I found that selling my products was just a little bit better for me than, for selling someone else.
Bob Moore and Associates came in and sold us the very first Clearwater Grant Cardone seminar, and I was there.
Really?
And 2 guys, I have 2 witnesses. It's on my Jay Smithwick podcast. I sat in the front row, and you had to put your name on the placard. I was probably 25 years old, a new sales manager, and when I put my name on, I put Sales God and sat in the front row.
Little cocky back in the early days.
A little, and got into a little debate with Grant. I'd love to get him on and talk about it. I'm sure he thinks about nothing but that.
Yeah. He wakes up thinking about your debate.
That's right. So anyway, that was fun. But the difference between rural and what I would call high process is rural seems to be a little more everyone knows everyone. And by the way, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's most effective. I'm just saying how I think that it is.
Sure.
So a little bit more one price or close to one price on the hope that person will return low pressure. Now, I don't really believe in pressure, although the rural person, I think, believes that the process that I grew up in would be pressure, which is serving a customer window, hold on the trade, give them an opportunity to pay, and then hang in there until you discover under what circumstance they'll buy. Not pressure, just sweetening the deal until you find out where they're happy. Mm-hmm. That's all. Yeah, so sure. I think from a high volume, making $1 million Domino's pizzas standpoint, we need to have that done. I don't think there'd be really a way to get our arms around. Now, at this first store, this Lincoln Mercury store, we spot delivered nothing on these 600-700 new and used a month. Everything was 2 days to get the car prepared over CSI issues, et cetera. So part of the process there, after we took our $1,000 deposit, see in 2 days, like a stone part of the sales process was managing the phone call that we don't want the car anymore because now that they had a copy of their agreement on their deposit, they shopped 2 places on the way home.
Yes. And that was at the high volume store?
Yes.
Wow.
And spotted 0. Weren't allowed to.
And you maintained over 600 cars and dealing with the fallout on the day after the.
There wasn't. Well, it was dealing with the process of the attempted fallout. We actually had a process that started with, of course, after the 5 hours we spent together, because it was World War II vets buying Lincolns and Mercury. So after the 5 hours we spent together on the lot, I personally will be sorry to lose you. And you can't have any bad sport or any bitterness in you at all, or it doesn't work, right?
Right.
But my manager is going to be thrilled. He did get a couple higher offers on the car. So I guess I just need to know how soon can you be here to sign off on the car so we can sell it to someone else, because you have a deposit on it right now. And then it started again when they showed up for their deposit. And by then we did have it ready and we could spot deliver it. And we save probably 9 out of 10 of those attempts.
Gotcha.
And with perfect CSI.
Mm-hmm. Now you said a term that I've not heard before, which is very unusual for me. And I've been doing this a long time as well. What is, you said high process. I said high volume. You said high process. Explain to me what you mean by high process store.
Well, okay. If everything that happens in what I would call a high quality environment, Ritz-Carlton Hotel, Four Seasons Hotel, Nordstrom's department store, I think everything is down to the molecule. And well, Jeff Bezos, I mean, Amazon, he's nothing but measuring and nothing but process. I think everything comes down to a process. I think when the Four Seasons people say chocolate chip cookies still, Billy, or we've been waiting for you when you walk up from that through the ropes, this is all processed and scripted. There's nothing happening by accident.
Right.
So actually at that store, we had, I mentioned those two businesses, we actually had Ritz-Carlton and Nordstrom both tour our store for process. And I personally trained about 400 Ford and Lincoln Mercury dealers on lease process when we were always number 1, 2, or 3 in 2-year leasing. Tasca was always number 1 in that era. We were one of the 100 pilot stores on that Ford 2-year plan in the late 80s. So my owner I was the junior manager, so I was the one in the barrel to do it. So Ford Motor Credit would fly in typically 40, because that's what our conference room held, typically 40 dealers at a time to hear the process that we went through from selling to presenting the lease to et cetera. And I asked my owner, why are you having me train all of our competition? Mm-hmm. And he says, well, 2 reasons. Number 1, to be in good graces with Ford Motor Company and Ford Motor Credit. We're good sports. They floor planning, approve all of our loans, all that business. Number 2, you could tell them all you want. They're not going to go back and do it.
Amen.
Right?
I want to speak to that real quick. And by the way, guys, my name is Billy Merritt. If you don't know me by now, I'm sorry. It's my fault. And every single day at 11, I bring you an expert. And today is a special treat. I've been talking to Jeff Stearns for about 10 minutes now, and I can tell really quickly who I have on my show. And I have a real expert. I have somebody that has some specialized knowledge that you need to know about. So we're going to get deep inside some processes, but more importantly, we're going to get deep inside some sales and some vendor solutions and the specialty that he knows. I'm going to drag it out of him. I'm going to get it out here, and it's going to help you sell more cars. This is a sales show. It's vitally important that you pay attention. Don't go anywhere. Jeff Stearns, tell us who you are again as far as your podcast and what's the purpose of your podcast. And then I can already tell you can circle right back around to the point that you were making. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Jeff.
I'll try not to get lost, Billy. and thanks for that kind intro. I'm a big fan of yours too. I mean it. I have been for a long time. I like that that other people doing Facebook events call them Billy events. So yeah. You're Heinz ketchup, brother.
Thank you.
So my podcast, really interesting. I mean, let me just be transparent and out. I mean, I believe in living my life out. Yeah. I'd mentioned earlier that I was divorced 8-9 years ago, a little bit of a surprise that had me change careers. One of the things that came along with that is I went a little reclusive. I put my nose down to the grindstone just to be available for the kids and work. I'm changing careers. I'm learning how to golf lefty and going from retail to phone vendor. And one of the things that was real easy for me to do was lose touch with a lot of people because it wasn't exciting for me to talk about what was going on, right? Not a lot of winning. It didn't feel like winning at that time. So a coinciding of a couple factors, a number of people that watch podcasts that I frankly never watched said, Jeff, you should do a podcast from the standpoint of we watch these guys doing these walk around presentations of Ferrari Californias or the new Corvette or whatever, and they're an engineer or they're a car enthusiast, but they're not a real car guy that actually bought and sold them, actually drove them, actually what you could actually explain. And probably like you, at parties or dinners or whatever, I get asked about the same stories about that crazy customer or that crazy dealer thing or the car that fell off the transport or the negotiation point that the non-car guy, the civilian, the dermatologist or mattress store owner or whatever is interested in. So what was interesting about the podcast was a way, and I'm finding out it's becoming a legacy piece, A, picking up the phone and calling people that I haven't spoke to in 5 to 15 years. Mm-hmm. And A, saying hi to them, and B, asking for something. Mm-hmm. And then the catch up is when I say, great, let's just schedule it. Then we have our catch up conversation like we haven't talked to each other in years, which is authentic, on video. So it's not an interview. Mm-hmm. It's a conversation that we video. And I'm lucky that I have some people that everybody, like you said, everybody's got a story. Everybody's interesting. If I know them, I love them. But I have some people that others could find interesting because these are the ones they're asking about at the dinner party. So I've got the General Motors exec that built the plant in Russia and all the stuff that he went through in that. Started as a pool hustler in the GM mailroom, very interesting. I did Derek Bell, the 5-time Le Mans winner, 2-time Sunbank, which is now Rolex 24 winner. He was very kind to come on. We met at a Bentley ride and drive about 15 years ago. And he said, sure. Why? Because he thought I was the Porsche podcast guy, but it's okay. We caught up later. And then, so I have the founder of Red Lobster. I have the owner of St. Elmo Steakhouse in Indianapolis that handles all the race overflow crowd that reserves every year. And I've got next VP of Ferrari. I've got the general manager of Rolls-Royce when BMW bought Rolls-Royce. He was employee number 1 to put the team together. I've got a NASCAR film guy. I got Malcolm Bricklin. I got a phenomenal BDC guy I met. I got the number 1 exotic car leasing guy in the nation. I got a salesman of mine that met every interesting exotic car athlete, that. So it's all a labor of love. And what I'm finding out is it's a legacy piece, because when we're done with a lot of these, I'm thinking, gosh, I lost my dad about 10 years ago. Gosh, he used to have the great stories. I wish I had a 1 or 2 hour video of my dad telling these stories. And I love giving the edited piece back to the family because they all seem to enjoy it. And what's put me a little bit on the fast track of trying to make time in my life for this, along with my 5-month-old baby and, selling and whatever else, and two teenage sons, is in a little bit of paddle boarding and skateboarding. There'll be plenty of time to sleep when we die, I figure.
Yeah.
But what really propelled me to push harder is there's a retired New Zealand rally driver who was driving Porsche 911s with like the 5 lights on the front through the dirt. I mean, really fun in New Zealand, and haven't talked to him in 6-7 years. And he sounded really weak, and he had cancer, and he was very upbeat and optimistic the way he always is. New Zealand, GF, he calls me GF. And he says, listen, I feel a little weak right now. I really want to do the show with you. Give me a few weeks. I'm starting a new treatment. And I hit him in 3 weeks, and his wife said he died a week earlier. And I thought, what if I could have got his stories on the show?
Yeah.
And it killed me for a week. It really did. I couldn't get rid of it. So the other thing is, of course, God forbid, when you're selling cars, tell people where you work, tell people what you do. How could someone buy from you if they don't know where you are and what they do? I figure putting myself out there as VP of sales for Car Chat 24 can't hurt if, God forbid, I can get an inbound lead once in a while.
Sure. Absolutely. So again, feel free to circle back anything, because sometimes I get something on my head and I want to talk about it, but it's because it's important and people need to know it. We have people watching. By the way, if you're watching, if you'll like this, if you'll share this, you'll give us a comment, invite a friend. This is some good information that you guys need to know about. I'm with you, man. I totally, we treat obscurity like our biggest enemy. So it's very important to get it out there. When it comes to podcasting, you need 2 things. You need talent, you need content, and you have both. So, now what we need to do is just get you exposed to we'll start with the 350 million Americans or the 270 million that have Facebook. Then of course we'll go into the different foreign markets. As a matter of fact, we have some people from looks like Germany who've commented on for some reason I have Germany fans, but that's cool. You
didn't mention looks. You said content and talent, and I've been waiting for the looks part.
That we're basically, we're radio guys. Actually, we just happen to have a video. We have a face made for radio, right? So, right. But you talked about inbound leads. So I want to this. Now we're getting into sales and something I'm very interested in, and I have my theory. I think it's closer to a law now. Exactly what a sales process should look like, and that process is twofold. Number one, we need to stop. Now, this is going to sound crazy, Jeff. Test me, okay? Test me. Let's have a real conversation and pick my theory apart, because if I can't back up my theory, then I need to change it, right? So number one, sales theory. We need to stop focusing so much on sales. Okay. And we need to stop focusing so much on sales and closing. Now, if you've been in a high process store, you guys are all about closing. And listen, I've been that. I was 1996 to whatever. Now it's been 25 years or so. I've always been a sales focused person, a closing. I'm like, stop selling and start closing. You know, I've read every closing book that's out there, and I've trained my salespeople very good at building teams. I've trained them on closing. I've developed some great closers that are now managing stores now. But we were focusing on the wrong thing. Had we focused on marketing and advertising that leads to lead generation, that leads to order taking, we would have been much better off. So those inbound leads, Jeff, that's what you really want. And what's better than an inbound lead is an inbound work order.
Oh my God. Well, show me. Okay. I'll take all the advice on air or off air, how to get that done in my business. But it's so funny you mention that, because my motto always was in sales that selling is a marketing job where selling a car gets in the way. Selling is a marketing job where selling a car gets in the way. So the way I worked it was that I could go, and I used to put a couple hundred hours a year on my boat when I was young and single while selling enough cars to do what I was doing. And when I left work, it wasn't because my shift was over when I was a salesperson. I left work when I had 10 appointments in front of me. And if I could get it, if I had 8 already and I only had to fill in a couple, and it took me a couple hours of calling old owners or orphans or, whatever, or referrals, then I could leave in an hour or two. But if it took me 10 more hours to get the one, I left when the job was done, not when the clock rang. Right. And what was interesting is people used to say, of course, I went from sales to management. And I'm sure you heard this too when you're trying to train. But Jeff, that's you. I can't do that. They'd make it a talent thing. And it used to make me crazy because, over time, you do something enough times, you hit enough golf balls, you throw enough free throws, whatever, you're going to get better at it. But what I was good at doing was creating a volume of opportunities, which ended up making me good by accident later. But I really wasn't. If you looked at all the opportunities I had, I wasn't the best closer on earth. I was just phenomenal at putting opportunities up and getting another chance and another chance and another chance, which of course developed into skills polished later. So I agree with you. And I was in the exotic car business for a while. So when I was running this Cadillac Land Rover store, we picked up the Rolls Bentley franchise, which is really interesting because the Rolls franchise was owned by a buy here, pay here lot that we obtained. So buy here, pay here, and Rolls Royce.
Wow.
So they sold one car over the 3 years they had it. We got the franchise cheap, and I wasn't interested in it at all. I was just in the middle of taking this Cadillac store from number 286 to number 1 in the Southeast, and some months number 1 in the United States, and doing a little something with Land Rover. And I didn't want to learn about etched glass and flower vases on the B pill. I didn't want to learn it. Like, I wasn't interested in it. I was trying to get volume out of this store. But what I found was that when I went into Rolls and Bentley fully, because I had my first son and I told my owner I wanted to work a little less as a GSM, like on a real schedule. And he said, just take over the Rolls and Bentley thing, come and go as you want, and do the meetings for the managers in Cadillac. I became afraid because I went from running what was at this point a 250 new and used Cadillac store to a franchise that did 1 in 3 years when we bought it. And in the year that we had it, we sold 15 cars. And I felt a little bit out of things to do, like a little bit low on activity. So I just started calling everyone in the world, from everyone that ever got service to everyone in the Rolls-Royce Owners Club, to, by the way, telling everyone I know on earth what I'm doing. And who do I know that drives an exotic car? Nobody. Until I started calling and telling everyone I knew that knew somebody. And the first year did 100. And by the third year did 300. But we were doing an average, myself, an average of 100, for real, 100 outbound calls a day. Mm-hmm. And then I would get an assistant when I had too much work that had to do 100, and then a third person that had to do 100. And it was all in the dialing.
So, and I love that. We have a call center here. So I'm clear. You sold 300 Rolls Royce. Is that correct?
new, used, Rolls, Bentley, Lotus, odd, exotic, like the odd traded in Ferrari, Lambo, whatever.
Basically started out with there were no existing sales really when you started. You said 1 in 3 months or something like that.
No. I took it over after a year. It had done 15 over the prior year, so 1.5 a month.
Okay, that's amazing. So right there, guys, this is a sales show. I've got Jeff Stearns on the podcast with me today on the podcast, and Jeff took a store that was selling 15 exotics, high end cars, and you have to do the math for me. He 20x that, I believe it's the proper term. He sold 300 cars in a period of 3 years. It took you 3 years to 20x the sales there. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So guys, listen to me. You've been watching this podcast. This is our 130 something episode right here. I know I have followers watching, commenting. They'll send me messages afterwards. They keep asking the same questions. How do I do this? How do I do this? How do I increase my sales? Listen to Jeff. Follow smart people. Watch his podcast. If a guy can go in where no sales were and 20x it in a market that he did not know about, he did not sell exotics before. He knew very few people that owned exotic cars, and you can come in with processes and hard work. That's what everybody doesn't want to hear, Jeff. You were making 100 phone calls a day. They had to be pretty cold if you didn't know anybody with exotic cars. And I assume you found somebody and then started asking for referrals, and you can tell us about your process. But if you can 20x your sales in 3 years in exotic cars, you have some information that we need to know about. So what did it take to get that started? Was it just the phone calls? Was it all about the phone calls?
Oh my God, what a process.
How important is it to come in and set up a phone system?
So you said that, hey, you have guys asking you how to do it, and then it all comes down to hard work. And I mean, really, that's what it is, because what's funny is the manufacturer, back when Rolls and Bentley were together, before one sold to BMW and one sold to VW, when the factory rep came in one day and he says, listen, we have dealers all over the country trying to figure out what you're doing, because the average store was selling 35 a year all over the United States. And we'd gotten to 100 new and certified pre-owned and used. They want to know what you're doing. But what was interesting is we were in a city where nobody drives them. We were in Clearwater, Florida. We were in the Buick, Grand Marquis, Oldsmobile, Toyota Avalon at the time, capital of the world. It wasn't like Lauderdale, Palm Beach, Miami, where you might see a Lamborghini and a Rolls at a light. And if you think, oh, it's Florida, that's 4.5, 5 hour drive from us. It's not even close to the same market, but we were beating cities like Miami, Palm Beach, Lauderdale, Atlanta, Manhattan, Connecticut, Detroit, Chicago, Dallas, Houston, Palm Beach. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Palm Springs was beating us, but Beverly Hills, San Fran, et cetera, we were beating in a city where nobody's driving them. And we were pumping out. We were selling into every market, because that referral base, they could have a house here, a house there, a business here, a business there. And they have the way they meet you is they have their secretary call. They want to buy a Phantom. They want to buy a Continental. They want to buy an old Turbo, or they want to buy an old Ferrari 355 or a 57 Super America short wheelbase alloy body that was made for the Dubai princess daughter in the 50s, whatever, with a Grand Prix engine. They would just have their secretary get on the phone and call all 40 of them with their Excel spreadsheet and say, what's your best price?
Wow.
So me coming out of this high process deal, that what was interesting is when I left this Lincoln Mercury store and came to Cadillac, the Cadillac salespeople, now this is for salespeople to hear and for owners and bosses to hear. I want you to think about this. When I left Lincoln and went to Cadillac, I thought I was going to the same customer. They were both World War II vets. I thought, oh, this is going to be a shoo-in. But it was very interesting. The Lincoln Mercury customer tended to be the more blue collar, a little saltier, never really had money in their life, sold their house in New Jersey for $350, came down and bought a condo for $50, and kind of had money for the first cash for the first time in their life, and said, let me get a new or late model Lincoln or Mercury or whatever. When I moved over to Cadillac, it was the same age, but it was like the retired CEO wearing a Rolex President buying a DeVille. It was a different market. So it wasn't exactly the same. And the Cadillac salespeople, and I want you to hear this part, I walked in as a 30-year-old GSM, youngest GSM in Cadillac in the nation at the time. And I had 5 salespeople that were 5 inmates that were running the store. And they had been there from between 16 and 32 years. So imagine trying to change culture as a punk kid that could be the son or grandson to any of these guys.
Oh, I know. I mean, not exactly, but I've dealt with the same situation.
Every store has these 5 guys, by the way, or gals. They all have the one that does this and does it. So, but what they told me, just in the short overview, is that process won't work here. So then my job became not a matter of will. It became a matter of selling. We're always selling, because now I got to sell guys that have been doing it 16, 32 years the same way on trying it a new way that they think their customer won't put up with. Mm-hmm. Right? So we got through that, and we grew Cadillac from doing 25 to 40 a month to a solid 80, and got the used car department from 50 to 80. And now we're going to work on Land Rover that was doing like 9.
How did you get buy-in, though? How did you change the 5 people that were telling you?
Oh my God, like raising kids. So it was making an off, 7 Habits, right?
Yes.
So it was an awful lot of emotional bank account deposits. It was an awful lot of yanking chain with the license and right to. Mm-hmm. It was an awful lot of jumping in and doing it for them when they said
that's what I was wanting to hear. Thank you. Okay, so speak on that a little bit. I'm sorry I jumped in before you finished it because I was hoping you were going to say that. So,
well, okay, so now, and I got to give the credit to this analogy to my dear friend. I don't know if you know Scott Kallur, the GM at Dimmitt Chevrolet in Clearwater.
No.
World famous guy. And I mean, I've learned so much from him in the business. But Scott Kallur was my roommate 30 years ago. He's the GM at Dimmitt Chevrolet. But when I joined a platform, Scott was running multiple stores. He had the greatest saying that is absolutely true. He says, when we run an ad for a sales manager, a desk manager, our interview goes like this. We say, can I please see your bolt hole? And I was just like you, bro. I was like, what do you mean? He says, the way we know they were a desk manager somewhere else is we ask to see their bolt hole. And they lean forward and they point to their bolt hole, which is when they're sitting at their chair at the desk, there's a bolt that runs straight down through their head, down through their body, down to the floor. And then they put a wing nut at the top because they can't ever get out of their chair. That's how we know they're a desk manager somewhere else.
Now I understand. And yes,
I'm with you. That. I love that. So, of course, it's often and early. And, of course, it's meeting the customer up front. So when you go on a TO, you're not the closer, scary closer. But going in and doing it, it's not like micromanaging. I mean, you got to walk a line doing everything for everyone and then giving them the opportunity. But I relished the opportunity, and my sales managers that I raised relished. It was just the mood that we had and the attitude that we had at jumping in. Now, when I went on a TO, or one of my staff went on a TO, it wasn't the time for the salesperson who was starving to go have his sandwich. I actually went on a TO and where the guy was leaving, and the salesperson, when I took over, went and ate. And I didn't know it because he left for a minute. I thought he was going to pull up the car or do something. And he comes back picking his teeth with a toothpick when I'm now writing the customer up. And I'm thinking, why in the world did I take a TO and close your sale? It wasn't so I could be your split deal guy and make the deal while you're. It's so that you could learn the process that I went through to take the guy from a stone ass flame shooting out of his butt. No. And where's my keys and where's my effing keys? And I'll never come back to this effing place again, to laughing, hugging, and signing up. And you didn't witness any of it, because then after the deal, we want to have a coaching session. Now, this is where I got low ratings as a manager on the employee surveys over the years, ESI, customer employee satisfaction. I was often low, and I learned something about people, but I've not been good at adjusting. You know, we all have our personality profile.
Sure.
I've not been good at training somebody privately or correcting them privately And they would get hung up on, I can't hear anything Jeff's saying because he's saying it in front of other people. The problem I have, the character defect that I have, is I never minded. We all treat the world how we want to be treated, right? We all see the world as it is. We all treat the world as we are, not as it is. So I never minded when a boss gave me a correction in front of anyone. I never thought twice about it because all I ever got out of it was he's telling me how to make more money and feed my family and pay my bills. And it never occurred to me to get upset that somebody's watching. And the interesting thing that I learned in the course was the difference between humans and animals is humans need to be right and not be wrong and want to look good and not look bad. And animals only worry about the workability of things for the survival of their species. And I think I'm an animal in that regard because I only cared about what would move the ball forward in feeding my family and paying my bills and making my customers happy. Because in the end, high pressure, low pressure, whatever you want to call it, if you don't sell them, if you don't close them, they don't get an opportunity for you to deliver on the bill of goods you've been promising the whole time and come through on your promises and have integrity and build the relationship that can't begin until the sale occurred.
Yes.
For them to become your raving fan and go tell everybody. So you can have the nicest, most low pressure, everyone loves you because you didn't sell them process in the world. But if you don't bring them into your world, they can't become your family.
And tell the story and be your advocate and be your marketing tool. Or, I didn't mean that in a negative way, but the best marketing tells the story. The best story comes from happy customers.
Not tool, marketing department, right?
There you go. Thank you.
Or advocate, right? So backing up to, you asked about, moving to the Rolls and Bentley process. So then I moved from Cadillac new, get it running, Cadillac used, get it running. It was all a project to me. And of course it was everything from performance reviewing people to letting them run me over a little to, so I can give something back, to jumping in, et cetera. I mean, all of that. I mean, that's 28 other shows. It'll take 28 shows.
Yeah.
So, but now I get hit with Land Rover, and this customer is different. Of course, I just went through that with Cadillac, and we took Land Rover from 9 to 35. Now I go to Rolls and Bentley, and I'm the selling man. I'm the department. I'm the director of operations over nobody. And it's interesting because of my low ESI scores. I had a lot of salespeople that had a problem with my management style, and I have it here too. It's, and I'm continually apologizing and repairing that. If I see somebody with a coaching opportunity, I want 5 people in the room so I don't have to teach 5 people. Where the one person getting the training can get hung up on not listening because he's correcting me in public, he's coaching me in public. People, you guys, listen, you shouldn't forget the delivery message, forget about the peripherals, forget about the style. If there's a message in there that's going to help you feed your baby or pay the power bill or make a customer happy, only listen for that. I mean, that's the workability of the survival of your species. Don't get hung up in all that. Can't look bad and have to look good. So, but what I thought was, because my Cadillac salesman that had been there forever, that was getting ready to retire, had been making an average of 40 grand a year. And now he's can't retire because he started making 100 grand a year his second year with me after making 30 to 40, 16 years in a row. I thought I could say or do anything with him and he'll love me. But what's interesting is I thought I tripled your income, you should love me. But I understand that's not the case. There's other.
It's not the case. I struggle with the same thing. I really do. I've lost good people because of it. I mean, I feel like, look, this is the way I was treated, and I got the message, so I'm going to relay the message, but you can't. I guess you can. And those who can handle it, man, they're powerful people. They really are. But I don't want to lose people by not adjusting my method. So I'm like you, man. I'm trying. I'm learning every day, and I've learned on this show by having people on that have better managing or leadership in that area. So I mean, it's a battle every day, right?
Yes. So in Rolls and Bentley, I had a few people, I don't want to say waiting for me to fail, but I may have had a little bit of that, like, oh, Mr. Boss, Mr. Lecture is now going to have to take people from A to Z. But what was interesting, for 5 or 6 years, I was already stopping them out in the parking lot and bringing them back in and selling them anyway. So I don't understand. Okay. So in Rolls and Bentley, it ended up being the absolute same process. I focused on letting people know where I work and what I do, having a whole bunch of people out there working for me that were happy to refer to me because they love me. Everyone on your show has people that listening to your show has people that love them, that are thrilled if they get an opportunity to help you out. Just like you're thrilled to refer to your barber, your lawn guy, your suit guy, your nail person, whatever. We all love helping, and we love frankly, we even more than that, we like justifying what we did. So we need other people to do it. So it turned into getting to know people, which was all these dials, which was going to events. I mean, at one time, Billy, I had a 3-car hauler, a guy that ran the hauler, Ron, that I had cars 2 to 3 times a week going 2 hours to 4 hours away, that we were driving to half the time in a suit, half the time in a tuxedo to get into a however much per plate political fundraiser or private school fundraiser or, whatever fundraiser, because no one in our area drove the car, and we would park the cars out front and start hawking them, jump out from behind the bushes, can I help you, with a Rolls and Bentley, and start showing them. So there was, work. And the manufacturer came in and said, we have a number of dealers around the nation wanting to know what you're doing. And because now and this is when we're doing 100 a year when the average is 35. And I said, well, I'm happy to do a seminar like I used to do for the Ford dealers. We dial at this time there were 3 of us. We dial about 500 dials a week. I can't rightly say it was 100 a day at average, but on Saturday, whatever we were behind, we would just go in and dial for the first few hours. By the way, how do you dial that many? We mainly wanted to leave messages. That's why I didn't mind doing it on a Saturday and calling their work. I wasn't trying to reach anybody. The more I couldn't reach, the better, because I could touch on a machine, on a voicemail or a text or an email the same way, even better. And when I would leave a guy 15 phone messages over 8 months or 10 months or 12 months, and he said, I'm ready now, and you left me a couple messages. Mm-hmm. That's the inbound lead.
Yes. I was just.
And, we say big sale, small close. So it was really a marketing job where selling a car got in the way, because we had very, very little negotiating, and a lot of salespeople could say, well, that's because they were wealthy, and, baloney. These people are the most savvy negotiators in the world, and that's why they got where they are if they're self-made. Don't get me wrong. We would get the lottery winner or the athlete that just did a sign-on bonus, and that could be an easy deal. But when you're doing 25 a month, how many lottery winners can you get? I don't think it's 1 a month. How many sign-on bonus ball players are you getting? I don't think it's 1 a month. We certainly got them, but it wasn't the majority. So it was the entrepreneur, it was the attorney, it was the whatever, that were very, very strong negotiators. But the rapport was so strong that we took it to what I called the conflict of interest in my sales process. And I wrote actually a sales book when I left that store. I did a couple seminars. But the conflict of interest that I'm always looking for is, Billy, what should I pay? The conflict of interest is they're asking me for advice, which is a very strong trust and respect position. Mm-hmm. But it's a conflict of interest because I could be looking out for my pocketbook or my gross, and I had to walk the line of the trust and walk the line of not giving away the 88 5,000-mile Testarossa with 3 sets of keys and all the books and the fire extinguisher and the original car cover that took me a year and a half to get. Mm-hmm. So, maybe I'd make 10 grand on the car when I could have made 20, and you can't take 5 because it takes you another year to go get one. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to always be put in that conflict of interest. Jeff, what's a fair deal? Mm-hmm. I knew when I got to the point of the customer asking me, it's like they're asking me to buy somewhere else. Sure. Same context, but that's from the 100 phone calls. That's the only place it comes from.
Yeah. So let me stop right here and just make a comment on this. So what Jeff's telling you right here is, if you have a strong enough process, and most importantly, a strong enough process and a strong enough dedication and commitment to work your ass off and make those 100 phone calls, 500 per week, then you can get your customer, your lead. They're not your customer until they buy, but you can get your potential customer, I like calling them leads, some people don't, you can get them on your side to the point that where it's a conflict of interest. They're actually saying, Jeff, what should I do? And that's what you want. Now, that has happened to me often, especially with repeat once you have that trust. But man, to hear you say that it's a goal from the beginning is powerful. So, we should probably do 28 shows so we could unpack each one of these. There's so many things we could talk about, but that is an amazing second time you've got me. Okay. Second time you got me on the show or surprised me with something that I haven't really thought about.
Billy, let me interject what you just said. When you start with that in mind, I didn't want to sell them too soon. If I met them in an event or met them through referral or met them because they called on an advertisement or something, and they would, in the first call or first couple of weeks, say, let's work a deal on this car, I didn't want to do it because I knew it was going to turn into a normal grind and give me your best price and let me call 28 stores, because I didn't earn the rapport level, earn the trust level for it to be, let's just flip a coin over the last $5,000, fax me a buyer's order. Thank you very much. I wanted to.
It's freezing up.
Everyone. Are we there? Are we okay?
Yeah, it buzzed out for a second, but you can.
I don't hear you, Billy.
Can you hear me now?
Are we good?
I'm good. Are you good? We should be okay now.
You're okay.
Are we back?
So
must be getting a delay between each other.
I'm a hush. Let him talk.
Should I go, Smith?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what I wanted to do was get the customer to the point of relationship and trust so that it could be a quick, easy deal, even if it took a year. After being there 6 years, we actually looked backwards. Well, we looked at it in the 4th year. The average sale that we had from meeting, incubation period, the average deal we had from meeting someone to closing them, average was 18 months. Because there's no need buyer. There's no one needing to get to work on Monday. This is just an ornament they're going to put in their garage, put 12 miles on it, and trade it again to me in 3 more months, right? They just want to show their buddies when they're over. So that meant for everyone that came in and bought a car right now because they got a windfall or came in with their girlfriend while their wife was out of town, which I don't advocate, but it happened. That means we also had one for 3 years. That took us 3 years of staying in touch. So we met them at a Sarasota Wine Fest, or met them at a $14 million open house that we wanted to stick our cars out in front of for obvious reasons, et cetera, et cetera. So another thing that you'd mention is you can't get them working for you or can't bring them in your family until you sell them. And I'm going to give you some gold right now. I don't know. Darn it. I'm going to put a PayPal thing up here if anyone wants to give me a tip.
Okay.
I'll put my address. You could just send me like flowers or something. You don't need to sell them to get referrals. And as a matter of fact, if you work it right, you can get more referrals out of the one that you didn't sell.
Okay. Explain.
So naturally, when we sell a car, we're going to ask for referrals. And everyone has their style. I don't expect you to be like me, but I'm a little bit shticky. So, my way would be, God forbid, would it kill you to send me somebody, right? And what happened was when I would call people, stay in touch. This could have been a Lincoln, Cadillac, or Bentley. And they're like, Jeff, we weren't really planning on it. We were just sort of, out of town and at this dealership and saw one and impulsively, right? And trying to, in a nice, uncomfortable way, tell me they bought elsewhere.
Right.
I wish that we could have a call-in or a survey. Maybe we could do this on another show, but I have the feeling that a lot of salespeople out there get bitter and throw away the phone number and get a little attitude. Some.
Guilty.
I'm going to let you know right now.
You can do it with me. You can do it with me because I'm guilty.
You could make that the best bird dog you ever had in your life. Billy, of course I wish that I'm the one, but I want you to relax. You got the car. You're going to love it. Of course you're going to love it, but do me a favor. When can you come by the store in it? Well, what do you want me to? I'm going to show you some things on the car that I'm sure the guy who sold it to you, I'm going to show it to you. And I would work twice as hard to make an appointment with the guy that bought elsewhere so I can do a hood and trunk delivery on him. I knew I could do it better than the other guy. Oh my God. You mean my whatever does this, right? And just congratulate him and give him a coffee and give him a hug and tell him to enjoy and say, maybe you'll think of me on the next one. And the guilt factor, I'd get 10 referrals out of him. Listen, I got this guy. His name is Frank. He's coming. I told him I bought my car from you.
I like it. I like powerful. That's three surprises. I don't know if I can handle another one, Smith. But I do want to mention this. I love what you're saying. And here's what I'm going to do, Jeff. I'm going to, if you will, accept a future invitation to come back. Now that I've got too many notes. We can't go through them all. We'll be here all afternoon. But I'll come up with a little more structured interview with some questions and send them to you in advance so we can. There's so much good information that I want to get from you to relay to people. I mean, we can't even get started talking about the call center and the BDC, but we will on a future show. But I want to talk about two things because you've really helped some salespeople today.
And Billy, don't put in your notes for another show. And obviously you can see I'm I mean, I love this. I mean, you could tell I love this, right? This is my hobby. Make sure on a later show to talk about BDC processes and getting people in, etc.
The entire show, Jeff, if you don't mind, we'll schedule.
Yeah,
because I think we have so much content that need to get out there. And here's what I'm going to do for you, Jeff. Smith is an amazing producer. He's gonna chop this thing up. He's gonna find at least those 3 nuggets that you gave us, and maybe more, maybe 8 or 10 or 12 different 1 minute to 3 minute video sections he'll send to you. You can now. Here's what I'm an expert at that I can help you with. Okay.
Thank you.
We're going to chop this thing up into smaller tidbits, and then we're going to put those things all over the place. We're going to put them on LinkedIn. We're going to put them on, we'll even put them on Snapchat. We're going to put them on our Facebook personal page. We'll put them on our business page on LinkedIn. We'll put them on our Instagram page. So we're just going to have content everywhere that, with useful, because a lot of people, they'll like to watch a 3-minute section, but they don't want to watch a 1-hour section, right? So they'll see your specialized knowledge, they'll see it, and then they'll come back for more later. So we will send you some of these links, these little clips, and you can disperse these clips everywhere. We treat obscurity we treat obscurity like the biggest enemy. And if you'll do that, because people, here's the thing, man, you have some knowledge and people need it. People need it. We need 350 million people in the United States to be watching you. So we'll help you with that. But what I'll do is let's have an entire BDC show, and then this may be an installment of 10 shows. This is great content. I would love to have it. We have the equipment. We have a little talent here. So if we can get some content from you, that'd be awesome. But I want to end this show talking about something that I heard you say that I've been telling people for a long time. And a lot of people hear me say something and they think I'm not an expert sometimes. Okay. And then after time, I win them over and they say, Billy, I should have listened to you a long time ago. So I'm going to give these people watching another opportunity for Jeff Stearns, an expert, to back up what I've been telling you for so long. When you rely on commission, when you rely on sales for your income, you need to be a master salesperson. And a master salesperson is actually the anti-sales person. Jeff hit on that. He gave a better example than I ever have. Okay. And to do that, you need to be an expert. So tell us, I mean, hell, you just gave us a 5-minute example of what the anti-salesperson is. But do you think of it like that? Has being an anti-salesperson, is that part of your mindset that you teach to your managers and the people that you train?
I believe I understand the context of what you mean. I don't like the term anti-salesperson because the best title I've ever had on a business card is salesperson.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. So let me back up what I'm saying. So the anti-salesperson, when you're a master, Steve Jobs, they said they called him so many accolades. They never called him a salesperson, yet he was the master salesperson. So that, he was seen as just an expert. And when you're calling someone who just bought a car somewhere else to come by and let you show them, you're being an anti-salesperson. So let's call it an expert But I say that just to get through, because here's what I hate, and I hope you do too. I know you do, because I can tell you're a professional. The cliche salesperson that says, "Oh, I got the best deal. Oh, are you ready to buy a car today?" All the cheesy things that came from the 80s, maybe before them, that I despised about the salesperson. I think we lost him again, didn't
I
we?
think we may have. He just turned into a blur. Yeah, I think it looked like we had like a 15-second delay
Okay,
earlier.
that's fine, because we can bring this. It's time to end the show.
I think a trial close is still
Coming back, maybe.
We're gonna get him some Wi-Fi.
Billy's voice disappeared.
What do we have? Fiber. Okay, I think
Yes.
I'm going to have to wrap up the show. We had some amazing content. We're going to have him back. We're going to have the expert Jeff Stearns back. We're going to talk about chat. We're going to talk about BDC. We're going to talk about call centers. We're going to talk about a lot of things. He's the expert, Jeff Stearns. I'm sure we can find a link to put in here for people to follow Jeff, because I want people to find him on his own YouTube channel. You need to subscribe to it, guys. I can't wait to have him back on here. It's been a great show. Thank you, Smith. Thank you, Jeff, for coming on. We'll see you guys soon. We'll schedule it. And thanks for the content and feedback. We'll see you guys tomorrow for Winning Together at 11.